So next we're going to take a look at the if statement action within a visible workflow. Now the if statement action allows the user to implement logic and decision making into a workflow depending on specific actions. This will include an expression that can be customized by the user and can choose a true or false path. So how we do this, we go to our workflow section, insert action, and we navigate to the if action as seen on screen here. Click OK and give it a name. I will just retain the name if action. And click OK and it will launch into your workflow as seen on the left hand side of the screen here. So there are multiple levels to an if action. There is the if action expression, and then there is true or false, then being true or else being false, with two sections to populate with further actions. Note that if actions can also be nested, so if you have multiple sections or multiple levels of decision making, they can be placed into one another and tidied away using the plus or minus symbols on screen here. For the example I'm doing here, I'm going to remove it just to make it easier, but note that this can be used. So once you go into the if action section, there is an expression tab as seen on the right hand side of the screen. Now the expression is what will be evaluated by visible. We have some examples in the bottom of the screen here. So as a test expression, I'm going to place 1 is greater than 2, which we know is obviously false. To demonstrate this, I'm going to insert a message dialog that will launch onto the screen into the then and else sections. So as seen here, I will insert the message dialog, and what this will do is this will launch a true onto the screen if the answer is true, and it will conversely launch false onto the screen if the answer is false, which we know it is. So as seen here, message dialog T and message dialog F. We'll now execute this if statement, and the false launches onto the screen as seen here, which is expected. Now note that this doesn't necessarily have to be a static expression, such as 1 is greater than 2, but rather it can also be equating strings of text and numbers, and it can also draw results from previous actions within a workflow. So to demonstrate this, I'd like to include an input dialog from the user. This action will draw information from the user into Visible by asking them a question or a statement. They interact with this action. And what we will do is we will take this input from the user and compare it, and then draw a decision within the if action. So within this input dialog, as seen on screen here, I'm going to ask the user to please type in yes or no. This result then will be saved as a variable within Visible, and we can use it to compare within the if action. So as you see here, this is the message that will display to the user. I will now customize the expression to compare this result with a predefined result. So again, we place it within the Visible syntax, angle bracket, exclamation mark, and the variable. So it'll input dialog 1 dot input. This will be the input from the user. And then we close them off with the exclamation mark and the angle bracket again. We will now examine this as it equals to. But first I'm going to place it in single quotes, just to denote that it's actually a string that I'm comparing. And what I'm doing here is I'm comparing it to yes. So if the input from the user is equal to yes, then it is true, and if it is not, it is false. So as we've seen now from running the workflow, we've typed in yes, and it is true, obviously. Note that this also works for the inverse. If I was to type in no, it would be false. So again, this has wide-ranging applications beyond just evaluating text of strings, but it can be very useful for determining the path of an inspection plan, or another workflow if you require, or indeed any other action that you may need to use within your application.